I love when developers listen to their fanbase. Last week, Dead Mage released the demo for Wizard of Legend 2, and just recently put out an update that contained a lot of changes that were originally fan suggestions. Let's get into it. One thing I need to say before everything else in this review is that this game is fun, and the animations for the game are beautiful, especially focusing on the Water Arcana and Shock Assault, which is my current favorite. Archaeomancer's Grasp is one of the new Arcana they just released, and it is wonderful to use. It's just super fun how you snap towards enemies or breakable objects, the way it hits so quickly, and the impact noise. I'm just a huge fan. And speaking of the Arcana, the combos in this game are crazy and way easier to set up than the first game, and the payoff is always worth it. Your relic choices feel a lot more impactful in this game than the first, though the randomized choice of relic does have its problems, but we'll get into that later. The death animation you have with the player is really cute, and I really like how you float up into the air, cross your arms and land. They added juggling for airborne enemies, which is really nice and really intuitive, because if you keep them up there, you kill anything, really. And the updates to the Earth Arcana they just released based on the feedback were actually sort of based on some feedback that I personally gave, which is really cool to see from development team. The Earth Fists just hit harder and they're bigger and they feel more like the first game. But I am not all sunshine and rainbows. I know that there are some bugs, there are some changes that I don't really like. Specifically, I want to start with the fact there doesn't seem to be a hurt animation or sound or any other real indicator that you take damage other than the health bar just going down. The Bending Torrents Arcana, which is visually beautiful, tends to target breakable objects, and some shots just kind of miss, or it kind of renders the upgraded version of it useless because your shot needs to return to you to activate, which it doesn't do all the time because it's too busy, hitting a fence. The Inferno Barrage Arcana, which is a new fire arcana, is really cool, and you can change the direction you shoot unless you're using the fully charged signature version, which I think is a bit of a letdown. And then there's the mini-bosses, which are the elementals. They don't really seem to have any sound other than their earth drills that I heard, but I'm sure that's probably just a demo thing and they're going to update that as time goes on. But I wanted to mention it at least, I'm not just ignoring things. One of my least favorite things in the demo right now is there's an upgrade for the Electric Spear, which is a really fun arcana called Magnetic Spear, and it doesn't actually do anything but make it worse because once it hits, it just kind of hits, which is a little disappointing. The same can be said for the Frost Shield relic, which just gives you an orbital that doesn't actually block projectiles like it says it does. It looks pretty though. And the last point I want to touch on is when your signature is fully charged, you get this beautiful trail of blue fire behind you, but I'd like a little bit more of an indication when it's initially fully charged. Maybe a loud ding like the first game, or make the screen darker, or maybe even a little animation so I can really tell when it's ready. And with all of that said, I do have some suggestions, but remember these are coming from someone with no game design experience. But I think these large rock enemies should be immune to the little tiny stuns your basic Arcana do. I think they're big, and I think they should really bury me into the ground if I'm just hitting them with the little Archaeomancer's Grasp. I also think that the Earth Arcana should push enemies to the end of their animation when you hit with them. Like the end of the Earth Fist, for example, should go to the knuckle. It would just feel more impactful in my opinion. Another thing I'd love is a library of the relics and different arcana upgrades that I've gotten into the game. I think unlocking them as I actually obtain them would be really neat to see what all is out there. I would also like a map. I get lost a lot, and a lot of times I can't remember where shops are, even though the levels are fairly linear compared to the original game where you get labyrinthian levels that were really hard to navigate but really fun to navigate. Some minor accessibility changes that I'm sure will come in a later update, like I use a PlayStation controller but all of my buttons are Xbox, and beyond that, when I change the keybinds, the symbol below the Arcana doesn't actually change. So for instance, your second Arcana is normally bound to the R2 or right trigger. I moved mine to my left bumper or L1 and it still says it's the right trigger. And finally, I noticed while I was on stream and was really quickly flipping between two Arcana, but the tooltip that pops up to tell you about it doesn't go away that quickly, so I did this maybe 100 or so times and it stayed on my screen switching between the two Arcana for maybe 5 minutes between about 3 rooms. You'll see some sped up footage in the background of how long it really took for it to go away. And finally, I want to talk about some comparisons to the first game that I feel are needing to be said but aren't really changes or specific feedback I'm giving. For instance, in the first game, when you had bad positioning or you made a bad move, the punishment was insane. You would immediately be swarmed upon, you would get hit, you would take damage, and your run might be over with one bad dash. But in the second game, it takes a lot less effort to save yourself, and I kinda miss that difficulty wall. Secondly, I noticed there's no elemental enemies, and I know I told you that there's a mini boss, called the Elemental, but they don't actually seem to have an element when it comes to taking damage. In the first game, when you picked your Arcana of a specific element, you'd have an advantage against a certain element and a disadvantage against another. That just seems to be completely gone from this game, and I really miss it. And finally, there's some items that say they give a percent increase into damage based on certain stats like gold or health, and I just wish they would tell me like the first game how much percent of damage increase I get or speed increase or whatever they give. Overall, I think this is a really good sign that this game is going to be good, which I'm really excited for because I really like the first game. That about covers my review and suggestions. I know this game is still just a demo, but I love that the community managers and the dev team have been so active in taking this feedback. If you go to the Discord, you can find me often in the voice channel, playing the game, and devs will just pop in and out just to watch. And it's because of this engagement with the community that I think that this game is going to be wonderful when it's ready for final release. And thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that nonsense. Hope to see you next time. Peace out.